Well, there's a big poetry event in Hamilton tonight. Chris Bailey is one of 3 award-winning poets launching their collections at Epic Books on Locke Street. His is called Forecast, Pretty Bleak. Oh, how timely, Chris, for that. Forecast, pretty bleak. It is.
People keep saying that, and who am I to disagree?
So this is your second collection, and I related so much to many of your poems because you're a commercial fisherman out in PEI, also a graphic designer, so you work with your hands, you work with your mind, but just so much of it was like, it just seemed down to earth, and like so many poems involve like the kitchen table or a kettle.
Yeah, a lot of, so I am a fisherman, and most of my work does come from just the people who live that kind of life and my family and my own experiences. And yeah, it's hard to escape that when it's all you've known for most of your life.
How did you start writing poetry?
So I also have a science degree. I was doing my undergrad at the University of Prince Edward Island, and I needed an elective to graduate, and I saw a paper on a wall advertising a creative writing workshop, and I thought, you know, I've heard some stories, I'm sure I can make some up. And so I took that, and I worked with Deirdre Kessler and Richard Lem, and then Richard Lem sent me off to Banff, where I got to work with Lorna Crozier, and Lorna and Richard both wrote letters of recommendation for me to get into the University of Guelph for the creative writing program, and here I am.
Oh, that's so cool, because I mean, when you think about commercial fishing, there's so much folklore, right? And you can just see how you've kind of woven that into some of your poems.
Yeah, it's folklore, and just like, well, there's the whole idea of fisherman tales or whatever, tall tales. And whenever I was a youngster, my father would go to the harbor, and you're never going to talk or tell stories, you're going down to tell lies. So that might have something to do with it as well.
But then you've also got a lot of plain truth in there. You've got, there's stories about living and making a living and dying.
Yeah, that's unnecessary, or no, sorry, that's unfortunately not unnecessarily part of the work, right? It's one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. A lot of fishermen don't know how to swim. And yeah, and as things have been progressing, there have been more safety standards coming in, but a friend of mine called it like documentary writing almost, where I do like perceive things going on and I write it down. I tend to keep a pretty detailed journal whenever I'm fishing, and that helps feed the poetry. It helps feed some other writing. I've done like fiction and nonfiction as well, so it's all grist for the mill at a certain point.
Very cool. This is National Poetry Month, and I take it that that's part of why this launch is going on tonight. I've kind of made it my goal this year for reading, to read more poetry, and I'm so glad that I wrote yours. Why do you think more people should look at poetry as a written art form?
That's a good question. Because typically when I think of art, the joke I make is art is just another guy from Brooklyn. But for poetry, I worked with Dion Brand doing my Master of Fine Arts at Guelph, and she told me that poetry is the seed of experience. And if you ever want to know what it's like to live a life you have never lived or may never live, you go and you seek out poetry from that life. And I found that like a pretty good guiding light whenever I want to learn something about a kind of way of doing things that I'm unfamiliar with. Okay. So it's almost an empathy machine.
Oh, that's a very good, yeah, because you get into that cadence, you kind of get into the experience. Well, I'm so glad that I had a chance to read Forecast, Pretty Bleak. And Chris is, thanks very much for joining us this morning. So Chris is going to be one of 3 poets tonight at the collection launch, the poetry event at Epic Books in Hamilton. It is a free event. The doors open at 6:30 and the event starts at 7 o'clock. Go check it out.